Julie again. I am so glad you came because I have a really cool adventure to go on today. Today, I'm at False Bay on San Juan Island, Washington. What's really cool about this bay is that when the tide goes out, we can walk out on it. It's called the Mudflats. Mudflats are like places where mud that kind of comes down from the ground is mixed with some of the sand on the beach. And it makes a huge place that we can walk out and explore. Do you want to explore with me today? Yes, you do. Okay, let's go. Look at all this green stuff on top of the sand. This is algae. It's very slippery and sometimes it's kind of smelly. It's a good thing I have my gum boots on because I need to walk really carefully now. Here we go. It doesn't look like there are animals living out here, but a lot of those animals live under the sand. There's also a lot of rocks here. Some animals live on top of the rocks, and some live under the rocks. It's not easy being an animal that lives in water, but the water goes out 2 times a day with the tide. When it's out, it can get very, very warm here. When it comes back in, then it's cold, like the animals need it to be. I just wonder how they can do it. Maybe we'll find out. Look at all these shells here. These are clams. Clams usually live down deep under the sand, but these shells are on top. Here's one. Clams have 2 shells that are made by a squishy body that lives inside, but there's no body in here. I wonder what happened. Maybe some animal ate it. They have this little hinge, kind of like a door, that helps these 2 shells open and shut, open and shut. It's probably a good idea to be able to close them if somebody wants to eat you. They can dig deep, and then they have a thing called a siphon. It's almost like a long neck that can come up into the water when they're down there, and it's how they might get their food. This reminds me of a day when I was walking with my dog on a different mudflat, and we could see the top of their siphon. See how the siphon sticks out of the sand? It squirts water up. Oh no! Look at it squirted Nola in the face. Isn't that funny? Here's a clam I found, but I can't open it. That means it must be alive, because it's just too strong to pull apart. Oh, look! There's a little snail here. This snail looks very different than a snail you might find in your garden. You can hardly see the shell. Bubble snails, just like your garden snails, only have 1 shell, not 2 like the clams. These guys can move around on the sand or on seaweed. And they like to eat the seaweed. Wowzer! Look what I found! It's a crab! What color is this crab? That's right! It's red. This is called a red rock crab. Do you know how many legs a crab has? Let's take a look. I'm going to pick him up very carefully because you can see he has these big claws in the front and they can pinch. So I'll pick him up right behind that. His shell like that. Oh, look at his moving. Let's count his legs. Wow, he's got a lot. He's got more than 2. Let's see. Wow, they're moving fast too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. 5 plus 5 more, that's 10. The red rock crab has 10 legs. You are so cool, but I'll put you back in the water so you don't get too warm. Look at all the barnacles on this rock. Barnacles are kind of like clams. They live inside the shells that their bodies made. But we can't see them because they have their little door shut. If we could see them though, we might laugh because they're upside down. Their heads are closer to the rock, and their feet, well, it's not really feet. It's kind of like a feathery thing. It sweeps through the water when the tide comes in, and it will come out to grab teeny tiny little animals that it likes to eat. Hey, the barnacle dance! Here's another snail, but this snail looks different. It's called a dog whelk. Doesn't look like a dog to me. It does have one shell, like the bubble snail. We found the bubble snail on the sand, close to the green algae, but these snails are on the rock, next to one of its favorite foods, the barnacles. Animals like to be close to where their food is. I kind of like to be close to my food too, don't you? Look what I found, another dog whelk snail. Let me see this guy. Wait a minute, that's not a snail. It's got legs. That's a crab. This is a hermit crab. Hermit crabs like to take the shells of other animals to use for their house. You're kind of a cute hermit crab. Here's another kind of animal. It's got 2 shells, just like a clam. But the shells are kind of bumpy. This is an oyster. An oyster doesn't live down in the sand like a clam. It attaches to hard things like this rock. That's because it makes a special kind of glue that helps it stick really strong. That's a good thing because if an animal wants to eat it, I think it would have a hard time pulling this oyster off the rock. I don't think it could do it. Here is another animal. This animal has 2 shells, but it's not a clam and it's not an oyster. It's called a mussel. The mussels are the ones with the blue shells. Can you see them all over the place? It's spelled different than the muscles that are in our arms, but it does have muscles. Mussels have muscles. They have muscles like clams and oysters to open and close their shells. Mussels don't dig down into the sand like clams do. They do stick to the rocks like oysters, but they use something different. They use this thing called byssal threads. Let's look at them closer. I brought my trusty magnifying glass to do that. Byssal threads look like string, but byssal threads are the strongest string in the whole world. What's under this rock? Oh my goodness! Wow, look what we found. They all scrambled away. These are little shore crabs. They don't hide in the sand, and they're not on top of the rocks. They're hiding under the rocks. Why do you think that is? Remember, when the tide goes out, it can get really warm. And if they hide under the rock, they can stay cooler, and also they can hide from birds that want to eat them. All right, little crab, you stay there. Stay safe. Wasn't it fun seeing so many different animals today? 3 of those animals have 2 shells. The clam, the mussel, and the oyster. They belong to a group called bivalves. That's kind of a funny word, huh? Bi means 2, and valve means shell. So 2 shells, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and the other one's missing right now, but there's 2. They also use muscles to open those shells. And they eat very similar food. But you know, if you remember, the clam digs deep, deep into the sand. And the mussel and the oyster, they attach to the rock, but they attach in different ways. It's really cool, though, how animals can live in the same place, but do very different things to survive. Wow! Did you see how far the tide came back in? That water's getting very close. And do you remember when we first got here, we looked out and wondered, is there any animals out here at all? Yeah, we saw barnacles, we saw snails, we saw crabs, and the bivalves that we just talked about. Now that the water's come back in, well, those bivalves, they had their shells shut really tight, kind of to keep what water they had inside. But now they can open back up. I bet they're happy. Happy as a clam. Oh my goodness. Dr. Grandma Julie is sometimes silly. But I also think that if we could come back again sometime, we might be able to find even more animals if we went digging down under the sand. Would you like to do that? I sure would. I'll tell you what, this was a fun adventure for me, and I sure hope it was for you. I hope you join me next time on Dr. Grandma Julie's Adventures. See you later.